submission.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair.
Good afternoon.
I would just like to make it clear to this representation review panel that I have been very happy with what we already have. The fact we have our 7-ward system has been a very pleasing system to work with. But I'm also very concerned at the fact that we are considering this proposal with the fact that at a time potentially 2 months before an election, this document could still be being considered in court according to your timetable at the front. And therefore, what on earth are we doing considering an initial proposal only 1 year out from the next election?
Yeah, statutory time frame.
Well, I think it's something, regardless, it really leaves me with concern that an issue like this should be something the council should be talking with others at a higher level about and be discussing it in the maybe year after the last election was held and so on, so that it always occurs on that basis, on maybe a 6-year review. And that's why I put my first comment in there, that I do not like the idea of this at this time, because of the timing it will have for it to be put into action if it was still being argued at the highest level. To 8 October next year, that's a very short time for it to be turned over to practicality. The second thing is I've been very happy with the 7 community boards, and I would be very concerned if it was reduced to 5. It only means a larger area for people to work with, and I really feel that when I go to a community board where there are 2 boards working, 2 wards at one board, I get a far better hearing. And I do think that they are also more focused on the area of community that you've got, because that's what your plan shows. And I do think, therefore, that to have 3 wards represented by 1 community board is just not on. And I feel that that is a very poor step backwards. I feel that that is the real crux of what I want to say to you on things there. But you were also saying earlier, as the council, that you were concerned at the number of submissions that you were receiving on this issue. Well, if only 100 or so of us have been putting in submissions out of 400,000 people in this city, is that really justification to go and change everything? Because at least when we were talking about the buses, they got 2,569. And that was, I thought, a very good level of submissions that ECAN got. I think that a number you tell us you've got is very, very low to justify change. And, I mean, it takes me back, Madam Chair, to one statement that was made a couple of 1,000 years ago, which you all need to think on. The gentleman said this: "We trained hard, and as soon as we formed up into teams, I was told we were going to be reorganized. I was to learn later in life that we tend to meet every new situation with reorganization. It is the most wonderful method for creating the illusion of progress while doing nothing more than creating demoralisation, inefficiency and confusion. And Caius Petronius, the Roman soldier who said that, I think sums up things like this very well. Do we really need to make change? Because I don't think, for instance, the way the ward map is drawn for Shirley, Papanui, butchering the likes of Yarni's electorate and area he represents, his wards, taking them into the Shirley Papanui area, really shows justifiable change and thought about where people who are currently represented by him are to be represented from elsewhere. And those people up there are a totally different group of people in the Shirley Papanui area than to attach them, thank you, onto that area. Hagley Ferrymead, I know from the people I work with on the disability community side of things, I treat in a very different way and with a totally different level of thinking than people up in Shirley Papanui or people in Fendleton. And the idea that the map of Fendleton ward, you go through this narrow little gap and look at it on there. That narrow little gap over there that looks like a funny dog's head, does it? Are they really Fendleton people? Who are they really on that map? And how does that justify, really? Should it not have been shut off at Ilam Road so that it is a more common sense area? And these whole maps, I think, really need rethinking again. Thank you.
So you would be in favour of retaining the wards that we've got. That requires the Local Government Commission to be satisfied that we've properly considered the position of the disparity on Banks Peninsula. So Banks Peninsula is way outside the 10% deviation, and we've been directed from previous decisions to have a good look at it, and you're saying that we've had a good look at it, doesn't work, leave things as they are.
Well, Madam Chairman, how can you ever change the likes of Banks Peninsula? Because it is a small number of people living over there, like you have in various places, like I lived in North Canterbury. There you have clusters of people living. And naturally, with all of the hills over there, how can you guarantee that the people on Banks Peninsula are going to get the same level of service and support, or need what is, say, being offered to Sumner or being offered to people in New Brighton? It's a totally different group of people. There are times when one has to think about the fact that they are a smaller community. And I know of people who live over there who have said to me they're very happy and they just hope that they don't get their ward butchered around.
But the point that I'm making is that the Local Government Commission has told us that we have to look at it because the disparity is so great. We are way outside the 10% limit, and when we go into the city, this is the impact of it. So what you're saying is that, and I'm asking you a question, you want us to say to the Local Government Commission, we've tested what happens to the rest of the city when we pull Banks Peninsula across the hills. It doesn't work. Leave it as it is.
I would think that that might be the best answer possible.
Right.
Because I do not feel that looking at these plans as this is the initial proposal anyway, and so that does not mean to say because it is the initial proposal that it's the final proposal.
No.
And that, I mean, that dog's hedge can surely be taken out of the Fendleton ward. And
but once you get numbers, once you pull because you might call it a dog's head, but it's actually people living there. And once you play around with the numbers, you get into the 10% problem.
I think both you and I, having been worked in the political area, know exactly what we do with numbers when we start to talk about electorates and everything. We're doing exactly the same thing here. We have to some stage have various sizes of wards and various sizes of community areas.
But the law says we can't deviate from the 10% under and over, you know, unless we've got a very good reason. The only area we've got a very good reason is Banks Peninsula.
Well, then I still don't think that we need to chop it and change it, because, as I said to you very simply at the beginning, I am very happy with the representation that we have received from the 7 community boards and the way it's been laid out, and I think that should be said to the local government commission. There does come a time when you do have to say to people, leave things alone.
Yep. Right, okay, just quickly Tim and then Phil.
Thank you, Philip. Look, Philip, you mentioned with regards to talking numbers, you mentioned with the bus consultation, just over 2,000 people, and you thought that was a good representation. Our staff, it has been said by many that came here, have done an incredibly good job with regards to the information with this. They've worked with between 2,000 and 3,000 people, and with those 2,000 and 3,000 people to get the submissions that we have, could that not be read as a good reflection on the good work that was done by that staff, and the majority of the people are okay with what's been proposed?
I'm only following back with what I said to you, what was published in the papers and what was published on the radios, that the council at the time, when I was preparing this document, said they had only received 30 formal submissions.
Yeah, but we did a lot of preliminary.
Oh, yes. But
we spoke to thousands of people, and that's the point that Tim's making.
Then, yes, but that's one thing that you can always say and should always be said as well, that you have spoken with thousands of people. It might give a better view to the public than the constant comments that I was hearing from people that, well, if you've only received 30 submissions, what's the worth of changing it?
We can't.
But the other, can I just say that there was a submission before afternoon tea from Hallswell saying if we left it as it is at the moment, they would feel left out. That is an area of high growth. They believe that their population has increased significantly since the 2013 census, by which we measure the mesh blocks, and the challenges in the Hallswell area they feel would be left unanswered if we left things as they were. So maybe there's a in-between point of view where we could leave things as they were, but perhaps look at maybe a couple of the areas like Banks Peninsula and Hallswell.
Well, Madam Chairman, just a final answer. You and I, as I said before, we all know that every so often things like this have to be done. Just because boundaries for numbers are moved doesn't basically mean to say that you have to reduce, say, 7 community boards to 5.
No. Yeah. So we can look at that. But look, thank you very much. It's much appreciated, the time that you've taken to come in and make your submission.
Thanking you.
Right, so we've got...